He was the architect of the Holocaust, responsible for the deaths of over 6 million people. But when the war ended and the world hunted him down, what happened to the people who shared his name? His wife, his daughter, his mistress, his secret children. Most people know how Heinrich Himmler's story ended. Captured by British soldiers, a cyanide capsule, dead within minutes. Case closed. But for his family, that's when the story got complicated. Some of them ran. Some of them hid. One of them dedicated her entire life to defending the man who horrified the world. And at least one spent decades trying to destroy everything he stood for. This is what happened to Himmler's family after World War II. And trust me, it is nothing like you'd expect. Now, let's go back to May 1945. Margaret Himmler, or Marga as Heinrich called her, was 7 years older than her husband, a former nurse, a businesswoman, and by most accounts, a deeply difficult woman to love. Their marriage had been cold for years before the war even ended. Heinrich had already moved on emotionally and physically, but Marga didn't know the full picture yet. She was still, officially, the wife of the second most powerful man in Nazi Germany. When the Reich collapsed in May 1945, Marga grabbed their daughter Gudrun and fled. She had no plan, no escape route, no sympathetic country waiting to take her in. She was simply running. She didn't get far. American forces captured Margaret and Gudrun in South Tyrol, northern Italy, just weeks after Germany's surrender. They were interned, held in a series of camps for the families of senior Nazi officials. Not the death camps her husband had built, but not freedom either. For years, Marga lived in a kind of limbo. Interrogated, watched, moved from camp to camp. She had no money, no status, and a last name that was now synonymous with mass murder. When she was finally released, she settled quietly in West Germany. She worked. She kept an extremely low profile. And she never, not once, in any documented interview or written record, expressed meaningful remorse for what her husband had done. She died in 1967, unremarkable, unrepentant, and largely forgotten, which was exactly what she wanted. But her daughter? Her daughter is a completely different story. Of everyone in Heinrich Himmler's family, no one loved him more than his daughter Gudrun, and no one caused more controversy in the decades after the war. Gudrun was born in 1929. She grew up adoring her father. She called him Puppy, her little doll. He took her on tours of concentration camps, not as a warning, not as a lesson in horror, as a proud father showing his little girl his work. She wrote in her diary after visiting Dachau in 1941, she was 12 years old, that it had been quite nice, that the prisoners looked healthy, that everything seemed fine. She had no idea what she was really seeing. Or perhaps, and this is the uncomfortable question historians still ask, she simply didn't want to know. After the war, after the camps, after the trials at Nuremberg exposed the full, stomach-turning scale of what the Nazi regime had done, Gudrun Himmler refused to accept it. She spent the rest of her life, her entire adult life, defending her father. She became a central figure in a shadowy West German network called Still Hilfe, which translates to Silent Help. The organization provided money, legal assistance, and safe passage to convicted Nazi war criminals, people who had run death camps, people who had ordered massacres, people the rest of the world wanted behind bars. Gudrun didn't just donate to this group. She became its public face, its moral backbone, if you can call it that. She visited convicted Nazis in prison. She fundraised for their legal appeals. She welcomed SS veterans into her home. Journalists who tracked her down over the years described the same experience. A polite, well-dressed elderly woman who would smile calmly and explain that her father was a great man who had been misunderstood, that the Holocaust was exaggerated, that history had been written by the victors. She married a man named Wolf Dieter Berwitz. She had children. She lived a quiet suburban life in Munich. And she never stopped. Not for a single decade. Not even close to the end. Gudrun Berwitz, née Himmler, died in 2018. She was 88 years old. And according to everyone who knew her, she died still believing her father was innocent. The daughter of the man who architected the Holocaust spent 73 years after his death, making sure his former soldiers were protected, funded, and free. Let that sink in for a moment. Here's something that doesn't make it into most history textbooks. Heinrich Himmler, the cold, bureaucratic, utterly ruthless architect of genocide, was also a man living a double life. While Margaret sat at home growing increasingly bitter, Heinrich had fallen deeply in love with his personal secretary. Her name was Hedwig Pothast. She was younger, warmer, and by all accounts genuinely devoted to him. He called her Häschen, Little Rabbit. By 1941, Hedwig was pregnant. Himmler didn't hide it, not from the Nazi inner circle anyway. Having a mistress and a second family was quietly tolerated, even encouraged in some SS circles, as part of a twisted ideology around Aryan reproduction. Hedwig gave birth to 2 children, a son named Helga, born in 1942, and a daughter named Nanette Dorothea, born in 1944. Himmler adored them. He set Hedwig up in a comfortable villa. He visited when he could. In the middle of organizing industrialized mass murder, he was also playing the role of devoted secret father. When the war collapsed, Hedwig did what Marga did. She ran. She was captured and interrogated by Allied forces. She told them everything she knew about Himmler's personal life, his habits, his psychology. Whether she did this out of fear, survival instinct, or something else entirely, we don't really know. What we do know is what came next for her children. Helga and Nanette grew up carrying one of the most infamous surnames in human history. There are very few documented records of their adult lives. They went to extraordinary lengths to disappear, to become nobody, to shed every trace of who their father was. Nanette, in particular, is believed to have changed her name entirely and built a completely private life somewhere in Europe. Decades of journalists and researchers have tried to find her. Almost no one has succeeded. Hedwig herself faded into obscurity after her interrogations. She died in 1994 in Bavaria, having spoken almost nothing publicly about her years with Himmler. She took most of it to her grave. But while Himmler's secret children chose invisibility, there was one person connected to the Himmler name who chose the exact opposite. Someone who didn't run from the legacy. Someone who decided to confront it head-on, and in doing so, became one of the most remarkable figures to emerge from the shadow of the Third Reich. Not everyone who carried the Himmler name chose denial. Not everyone buried their head in the sand, funded war criminals, or quietly disappeared into suburban anonymity. Some of them looked directly at what their family had done and decided to spend their lives making sure the world never forgot it. Gudrun Himmler is Heinrich's great-niece, the granddaughter of his brother Ernst. And in 2005, she did something that took extraordinary courage. She wrote a book. It was called The Himmler Brothers. And it wasn't a defense. It wasn't an apology. It was a ruthless, unflinching excavation of her own family's role in the Holocaust. She dug through archives, tracked down survivors, interviewed relatives who didn't want to talk, and put everything on the page, including the parts that made her own family look monstrous. Because they were. Gudrun didn't have to do any of this. She could have changed her name. She could have moved abroad and told no one where she came from. She could have done what Himmler's secret children did and simply vanished. Instead, she stood up in front of the world and said, "This is my family. This is what they did, and I will not pretend otherwise." In interviews, she has spoken about what it feels like to carry that name. The shame, the weight of it. Walking into a room and watching people's faces change when they hear who she is. The impossibility of separating yourself from a history you had no part in creating but are forever connected to. She married an Israeli man whose own family had suffered under the Nazi regime. They have a son together, a child who carries both histories in his blood simultaneously, the persecuted and the perpetrator, bound together in one small human being. Gudrun has said that her son represents something important to her, not absolution. She's been very clear that there is no absolution, but perhaps something like continuation. Life choosing to go forward despite everything. And then there's the question that Gudrun herself has grappled with publicly, the question that sits at the heart of this entire story. What do you owe the world when your family name is synonymous with evil? What is the responsibility of the people left behind? Is silence complicity? Is speaking out enough? Can any action ever be enough? Gudrun Himmler said yes. My father was a great man and spent 73 years protecting his legacy. Gudrun Himmler said no. My family were architects of horror and spent decades tearing that legacy apart brick by brick. Same blood, completely opposite choices. And that contrast, right there, is what makes this story so deeply, uncomfortably human. So what do we do with all of this? We started today with a simple question. What happened to Himmler's family after the war? And the answer turned out to be anything but simple. A wife who faded into silence and felt nothing. A daughter who spent her entire life fighting for the men who ran death camps and died still believing her father was innocent. A mistress who told the Allies everything, then disappeared. Two secret children who erased themselves from history so completely that even now, decades later, we barely know their names. And then Gudrun, who chose truth over comfort, who looked at the worst parts of her own blood and refused to look away. These aren't just stories about one family. They're stories about how human beings deal with guilt, with inherited shame, with the question of whether we are responsible for things we didn't do, but benefit from, or are connected to, or carry the name of. That question isn't just historical. It's alive right now, in conversations about generational trauma, about colonial legacy, about what families, communities, and entire nations owe to the people their ancestors harmed. History doesn't end when the war does. It doesn't end when the last survivor dies. It doesn't end when the last perpetrator is buried. It lives on, in the choices made by the people left behind. Gudrun made her choice. Gudrun made hers. And in some small way, every single one of us makes that same kind of choice. Every time we decide whether to confront something uncomfortable or look away. Every time we choose honesty over the easier story. The question isn't really what happened to Himmler's family. The question is, what would you have done?